and maybe a smart country, but maybe not so smart, because when you look at some of the waste, fraud, and abuse that's being uncovered by DOJ and the people at DOJ, these are young, often young, but super brilliant people, incredible computer scientists and other things, and they're finding levels of fraud and waste and abuse like I think nobody ever thought possible. But before we do that, I just want to ask Will to come over. I've just finished signing some executive orders, and if we could start with that, Will, you might want to come up here and just explain what we did. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. A short while ago, President Trump signed three items. The first is an executive order relating to the affordability and availability of in vitro fertilization and other fertility treatments. These are treatments that have become unaffordable for many Americans, or have been unaffordable for many Americans. And the executive order is a directive to the Domestic Policy Council to examine ways to make IVF and other fertility treatments more affordable for more Americans. The second item that we signed was a presidential memorandum imposing radical transparency requirements on government departments and agencies, in keeping with President Trump and the administration's broader commitment to governmental transparency. What this presidential memorandum would do is require, as waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered, as programs are canceled, and ultimately as taxpayer dollars are saved, this presidential memorandum would require departments and agencies to make all of the details of that freely available to the public. Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much, Will. That was the primary purpose of this conference, to explain that they're all very important in their own way. Fertilization, I've been saying that we're going to do what we have to do, and I think the women and families, husbands, are very appreciative of it. But that was it. I do want to say while I'm up here, I've been contacted by some of the biggest companies in the world, and because of what we're doing economically and through tariffs and taxes and incentives, they want to come back into the United States. And we'll be announcing various very large companies, the biggest actually, and they'll be coming back, having to do with chips and having to do also with cars and lots of other things. We're going to be announcing some very, very big, momentous decisions are being made by companies all around the world, the biggest, and they want to come back into the U.S. Car plants are being canceled in other locations now because they want to build them here. And you read about a couple, not that I want to mention names or anything, but you read about a couple of big ones in Mexico just got canceled because they're going to be building them in the United States. And that's very simply because of what we're doing with respect to taxes, tariffs, and incentives. And I think it's a very important thing. And you'll be seeing this over the next probably over the next 2 years, to be honest, but you're going to see a lot of it over the next couple of weeks. A lot of big ones are going to be announcing. And so while we're here, I guess we can take a couple of quick questions. Go ahead, please. Please.
Mr. President, have you decided specifically what the auto tariff rate should be?
Yeah, I probably will tell you that on April 2nd, but it'll be in the neighborhood of 25%.
And pharmaceuticals?
It'll be 25% and higher, and it'll go very substantially higher over a course of a year. But we want to give them time to come in because, as you know, when they come into the United States and they have their plant or factory here, there is no tariff. So we want to give them a little bit of a chance. Yes, thank you.
The EU, Andrea Shalal, the EU representative is going to be here in Washington tomorrow. He's going to be meeting with Hassett and Greer and Letnick. What can the EU do to sort of avoid the reciprocal tariffs that you've talked about? And, you've talked a lot about the VAT. Do you expect them to reduce that?
Well, they did already, as I understand it, reduce their car tariff all the way down to what we have. And a lot of that will take place, and I think some won't do it and some will do it. But the EU had a 10% tax on cars, and now they have a 2.5% tax, which is the exact same as us. So already we've saved a tremendous amount. That would be great. If everybody would do that, then we'd all be on the same playing field. Because essentially what we're doing with the tariffs is, they charge us, we charge them, same amount. And it's called reciprocal, actually. And whatever they charge us, we're charging them. And so the EU is, I appreciate that they did this, but, the EU has been very unfair to us. We have a deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm products. They don't take almost anything. They take very little. And we're going to have to straighten that out. And we will. I have no doubt about it. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Russia talks, your impression of how they went today, and if you're perhaps more confident or less confident of a deal after what happened today?
Well, much more confident. They were very good. Russia wants to do something. They want to stop the savage barbarianism. I mean, what's going on over there? It's soldiers are being killed by the thousands on a weekly basis. It's ridiculous. And they're not American soldiers. They're Russian soldiers, and they're Ukrainian soldiers largely, although a lot of Koreans have been killed, as you know. Quite a bit of them have been killed. They came over to fight, and a large portion have been wiped out. But we want to end it. It's a senseless war. It should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame to see it. And I see pictures that you don't see, but I see pictures of fields that look just horrible. It looks like Gettysburg. If you see the old pictures of Gettysburg, it's soldiers lying all over the field, body parts all over the field. They're all dead. And this is going on a daily basis. It's a horrible thing. Both Russia and Ukraine, they're losing thousands and thousands of soldiers. And a lot of people have been killed, too. I think that's one of the things that you'll see historically, and you'll see later on as it goes along. I think people are going to be surprised at how many people, not only soldiers, have been killed in Ukraine. A lot more people than you think. Yeah, please.
President Trump, as part of a peace deal with Putin, would you be willing to consider removing all American troops from Europe?
Well, nobody's asked me to do that, so I don't think we'd have to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. But that question's never really come up. Yeah. Please.
Sir, do you support stationing European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of this peace deal?
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine.
Even if the Russians are
I mean, I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But, if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all. We're talking about this now, peace. We have either a ceasefire or a peace itself, and we're looking to do both. We'd start off with the ceasefire, and if they want to do that. I know France was willing to do that, and I thought that was a beautiful gesture. Yeah, please.
Do you have any message for Ukrainians who, after 3 years of fighting, might feel betrayed or disappointed at not having a seat at these initial talks in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think I'm really disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. 1,000-year-old domes that are so beautiful, you can't replace that. A whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago, You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And by the way, we wouldn't have had October 7th. You know that. We wouldn't have had October 7th either in Israel. And we wouldn't have had that mess that's going on over there. It's like we have great fire people here. We're putting out fires. All over the world, we're putting out fires. So that wouldn't have happened. And you know what else wouldn't have happened? Inflation. Because it was caused really by the cost of energy going through the roof because of their bad energy policies and also their spending, their terrible spending, wasteful spending on the Green New Scam. It's a scam. It's a whole big scam. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you a little closer to home. What would it take for you to reconsider the restrictions on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide, using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender affirming care. And they're concerned about that being an encroaching amount of liberalism in the way in which the press writes about things. Do you share those concerns?
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous. And I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't. But the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only the essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press. And I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But, you know, thank you for the question. Who are you with? Very good question. Thank you. Yes.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine. Well, we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. The whole, I mean, so many of the cities. I mean, they haven't done it in Kiev because I guess they don't want to shoot too many rockets in there. They've done it 20%, but they haven't done it 100%. If they wanted to do it 100%, it would probably happen very quickly. But you have cities that are absolutely decimated. And yeah, I would say that, you know, when they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to, wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election. That's not a Russia thing. That's something coming from me and coming from many other countries also. You know, Ukraine is being just wiped out. Look at what's happening to the cities. There are cities, there's not even a building standing. It's a massive, you talk about Gaza. I mean, it's literally, these cities look like Gaza. Actually, many have, percentage-wise, more buildings knocked down than in Gaza. So, you know, people are tired of it. People want to see something happen. And, you know, the other thing that it's been bothering me for a long time, because I solved the problem with NATO. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars into the funds of NATO when I said, you got to pay, because the United States was paying for European countries, and then they take advantage of us on trade. But I've seen it. Look, they have to pay. They have to find out, where's the money going to? We have, I believe President Zelensky said last week that he doesn't know where half of the money is that we gave him. Well, we gave them, I believe, $350 billion, but let's say it's something less than that, but it's a lot. And we have to equalize with Europe, because Europe has given us given a very much smaller percentage than that. I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And nobody, I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taken place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. You know, when they say they took a poll and Zelensky's at 4%, who's living there? You know, I mean, it's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down. And this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
One follow-up question. How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing for this, obviously, they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort. How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal?
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine. And it was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in. Don't go in. Don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested. I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. And, you know, it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please.
In a court filing, the White House said that Elon Musk is not a DOJ employee and has no authority to make decisions. Can you clarify for us today
well, Elon
what
Musk,
his exact role is there?
Yeah. Elon is, to me, a patriot. So, you know, you could call him an employee, you could call him a consultant, you could call him whatever you want. But he's a patriot. I mean, look at the kind of things I just said. Just write it down, just in case that question got asked, right? And which I'm surprised it took so long, actually. But you know what? Ukraine's a bigger deal because people are dying by the thousands a week, thousands. But look at this: from 90 to 99, Social Security, 6,054,000 people. Well, that's okay. Maybe that's possible. You know, 90 to 99, maybe it's possible. It's a lot of people, though, at that. But people that live to 100 to 109, 4,734,000. Wow, that's a lot. That means over 100 years old. They're 4 million people. I don't know too many. I know people that are doing great in their 90s, but not too many people over 100. But over 120, from 120 years old, people that are 120 years old up to 129. 3,472,000 people. Wow. You know, that can't possibly be because the record is like, I think it's one person, a woman, lived to 127, but they have 3,472. Okay, but now we're going really in. People from 130 years old to 139-year-old, 3,936,000. Wow. I wonder if people are getting paid with all this. I mean, are these checks? And that's what we're checking right now. People from 140 years old to 149 years old, 3,542,000, 140 years old and beyond. Now we're really going, because we're looking to break the record by 25 years. People from 150 years old to 159 years old, 1,345,000. These are in the, by the way, these are in the computer files. This is what they do well. They're super. I asked Elon, who are these Doge people? He said they're super brilliant computer people and they love the country. It's simple. Wait a minute. People from 160 years old to 169 years, 121,000. So 160-year-old people. 170 to 179,000, 6,087. But now, let's go into the real numbers. From 200 to 209 years old, 879 people. From 210 years old, I haven't met any of them. And if I did, I would bless them. I would worship the ground they walk on. 210 to 219 years, 866. From 220 years old to 229 years old, 1,039. And then you have two people, from 240 years old to 249 years old, one person. And there's one person that's 360 years old. That's just that. And then, where's the money being spent, right? Let's go into that for just a second. $520 million for a consultant on the environment. It's called Environmental, Social, and Governance Investments in Africa, and mobilize private sector resources. $520 million. Somebody got $520 million for an environmental, sounds like an environmental study. I've always been one that paid a lot of money for my environmental studies, but I paid like $50,000, not $520 million. $520 million for ESG. $25 million to promote biodiversity, conservation, and promote licit livelihoods by developing socially responsible behavior in the country of Colombia.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor this, what's turned into a press conference for President Trump down there at Mar-a-Lago. He began by announcing 3 items that he has signed. One executive order on the affordability of IVF. There's also a presidential memorandum on governmental transparency that he signed. And then also an oversight function for independent agencies, basically, so that only the president or the attorney general can speak on behalf of the U.S. government. I want to bring in our White House correspondent, Mary Alice Parks, and ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer for more on this. And Mary Alice, I mean, a lot to unpack here, but I'm going to start with this executive order on the affordability of IVF. We know that was something that even his party was split on at one point. We'd seen some states, as he says, that he returned the decision back to the states on abortion. Some states went further and outlawed IVF treatments. And it drew a lot of attention. He's certainly kind of pivoted since then. And here you see this kind of return to populist politics, kind of trying to cement the accessibility and affordability for IVF.
You're exactly right. The politics shifting on this. He's been trying to be seen as a supporter of IVF. We don't know yet what the policy will be. I think it's important to note that this EO he signed really is asking for policy recommendations for agencies to look into ways they might be able to make IVF fertility treatments more affordable for Americans. We know thousands of American families pay thousands of dollars for fertility treatments. And it was about exactly a year ago that we had had that ruling in Alabama where an Alabama judge said that under Alabama's very conservative law, they didn't feel like that it seemed like an embryo, even one developed during an IVF process, should be treated with all the rights and dignity of an unborn child. And that ruling in Alabama, you remember, sort of set off a real cascade of policy changes where IVF providers and clinics were worried about whether they could continue to see patients and go through with treatments because they were worried about whether they could maintain and keep embryos under that law. Of course, Alabama sort of rejiggered their law. They moved swiftly. Republicans had to come out and say that they still wanted to support fertility treatments, that basically that ruling they thought went too far. And this now, a year later, I think is, like you said, the president trying to acknowledge the politics in this moment, that the Republican Party didn't want to be engaged or seen as engaging in limiting IVF. Though I think it is important to also remember that in this last year, we also had bills come up on Capitol Hill. Democrats brought bills that tried to cement and codify protections around IVF and fertility treatments, and many Republicans voted against those. There is an ideological split in the Republican Party about when life begins, when protection of life begins, what the law should look like around protecting embryos even outside a fetus. And so this will no doubt continue to be a discussion, especially if the White House pursues specific policies beyond just asking for policy recommendations to try to lower costs, Alex.
Yeah, certainly. And Devin, I want you to hop in here because the other thing that was brought up, and it wasn't part of these 3 items that the president signed, but he was asked about DOGE. And actually, even before he was asked about it, he came out today and praised the work that DOGE has done. He was asked about Elon's role with that organization, whether he was a figurehead or specifically actually like leading the organization. And I'll note that all this comes as there was just a ruling by a district judge on DOGE and its ability to continue on with these firings of federal employees, and also its access to data for a number of State Department or for a number of departments.
Yeah, the legal barrage that is buffeting the Trump administration right now, Alex, specifically with respect to Elon Musk and what DOGE is doing to curtail the size of the federal government, hinges in large part on what type of position Elon Musk has. What type of authority does he have? And the White House has faced a lot of questions in the past 24 hours. President Trump answered a couple of those just now about what power Elon Musk is actually exerting behind the scenes. Why does that matter? Well, the Constitution, of course, requires Senate confirmation of cabinet secretaries and other officials who lead agencies and wield a lot of power. Elon Musk has not been confirmed. And so a lot of the legal battles that are playing out and will play out for the coming weeks and months really turn on this question. Who is Elon Musk behind the scenes? What authority does he have? Has he been properly installed? And today the president was leaning quite heavily into this idea that Elon Musk is just an employee. He's just an advisor. In other words, he doesn't have a lot of power in actuality. He doesn't have any authority. The administration said as much today in court records, but of course a number of plaintiffs from states to government employees who've been fired are asking the courts to take a close look at this. They allege that Elon Musk has a lot more power than we're led to believe he has, and that he should be struck down from his position, and all the changes that have come from DOGE should be put on pause because he's illegally installed, Alex. So this is a central question. The president now calling Musk a patriot and reiterating in his view that Musk is simply an employee, or as he put it today, a consultant. Alex.
Yeah, and well, thank you for that, Devin. And just to reiterate, that federal judge in Washington denied an urgent request to block Elon Musk and DOGE from firing employees or accessing sensitive records for half a dozen departments. That was something that we were told that judge would take about 24 hours to come to her decision. But even when she was reviewing this case at first, it seemed that she was inclined to deny this urgent request from at least 14 attorneys general. Mary Alice, I want to go back to you because there was one other thing that really kind of stood out to me. We're talking about, these talks that happened in Saudi Arabia between Russia and the U.S., Kyiv on the sidelines of these negotiations. But you heard the president asked about these talks today. He said that that he was much more confident after these talks with Russia today. He also threw some cold water on President Zelensky of Ukraine, saying, noting his approval ratings, and also he compared Ukraine to Gaza and said that this war never should have started. And he appeared, at least in the way that he phrased it, to blame Ukraine for this.
Well, he definitely got very defensive when faced with criticism about why Ukraine wasn't invited to the negotiating table about a war that's taking place in Ukraine. It was very interesting to listen to the language, the rhetoric from the president. Like you said, he repeated this idea that Ukraine could have ended the war, could have ended the war. It should never have happened. Of course, from Ukraine's perspective, they've been defending their own territory. It was Russia that started the war by crossing their border into their sovereign territory. Russian tanks rolling across the border. We all remember those images, and Russia fighting to take Ukraine's territory. I think that the president's going to continue to face a lot of criticism, not only from Ukraine, but from traditional NATO and European allies about whether or not he's trying to negotiate an end to the war without Ukraine at the table. We've seen European leaders this week extremely nervous about this, holding their own emergency meeting in Paris. They're very worried that the United States is going to try to strong-arm Ukraine into accepting some kind of lopsided deal, or that they're going through this effort to establish more conversations with Russia, while Ukraine is saying they just won't accept a deal that they're not a part of, Alex.
All right, Mary Alice and Devin, thank you very much. And coming up after the break, the latest on the devastating flooding in the Midwest. Stay with us.
Now, at Verizon Business, every business gets the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus. New customer, loyal customer, every customer. This one's for you on America's most reliable 5G network. Get the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus on us. Powered by Verizon Business.
I love winter forecasting. It's the reason I went into meteorology. As far as winter weather goes, I think the biggest thing for Chicagoans is commuting.
The thing that is consistently dangerous for us are winter storms. They can shut the city down in a moment's notice.
One of these days, we're getting another big blizzard, and we will be there ready to cover that when it's happening.
Keeping you up to date and prepared for impactful winter weather. That's what it means to be the Weather Authority.
If you take or have taken Humira for moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis and still have symptoms, you don't have to settle. Ask your gastroenterologist if switching to Rinvoq is right for you. It's one of the latest treatments from the makers of Humira. Rinvoq works differently than Humira and may help. Rinvoq is a once-daily pill that can deliver rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission, and helps visibly reduce damage of the intestinal lining.
Rinvoq can lower ability to fight infections. Before treatment, test for TB and do blood work. Serious infections, blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin. Serious allergic reactions, GI tears, death, heart attack, and stroke occurred. CV event risk increases in age 50 plus with a heart disease risk factor. Tell your doctor if you've had these events: infection, Hep B or C, smoked, are pregnant, or planning. Don't take if allergic or have an infection.
Rapid symptom relief and lasting steroid-free remission are possible with Rinvoq. Ask your gastroenterologist if switching to Rinvoq is right for you. You could pay as little as $0 per month.
Welcome back. The death toll in Kentucky has risen to at least 14 people from that devastating storm that hammered the state over the weekend. And so far, over 1,000 people have been rescued across the state, according to Governor Beshear. And that storm dumped over 8 inches.
Happened to be a vice president, never went to the border, never called the border people. I call them all the time. I speak to them all the time. But here's the good news. We have the most secure border we've ever had right now. As secure and even more secure than I had it 4 years ago. And the Border Patrol is doing incredible. ICE is doing incredible. Tom Homan's unbelievable, and Kristi Noem has been just working very, very hard, very, very hard. And we have the best numbers we've ever had, and we're going to keep it that way. And we're going to find out how a thing like this could have happened to our country, because who would allow this to happen? What they've done to our country is so sad. Thank you very much. Thank you.